Welcome back to another episode of the CrossWinds Church More Than Sunday podcast. This is Chris. I'm the senior pastor here. And I say welcome back again. Some of you may have only listened to this because we're doing some more announcements about when church will be back meeting in person. But we have been doing episodes over the course of the shelter in place and us not being able to gather in person on Sundays. And I don't know, this is like 48, 49, something like that we're putting out right now. You may have only listened to number 46 a few days ago that talked about, if you heard it, you heard me say, I think church never closed. That was kind of the theme of that recording. And I'm doing one more today because we had a fascinating, important phone call yesterday with the Alameda County Health Department. Myself and a bunch of other local pastors had a Zoom call where we got to ask questions and get some answers about what it will look like for churches to meet in person again. And I thought you might be interested in hearing more about that. For me, I loved the fact that we were even able to do that. And I want to say, way to go, Alameda County Health Department, for engaging churches enough to want to sit down and do something like that. So I thought I'd just kind of give you a report on that, as it definitely plays into CrossWinds plans. But even before I get into it, if I can we talk about how we got here? How we got to a place that we're having churches open up across California right now, and churches are having to weigh whether they're going to follow the president's comments about reopening. I'm putting that in air quotes, as I said on that other recording. The governor's comments. Here's what's happened. And as a pastor, I've been following this real closely, all right? There has been nationwide pressure from church leaders, faith group leaders, to be allowed to have church resume in person. A few weeks back, 1,500 churches, maybe more, in Southern California, like the Inland Empire, especially the Inland Empire. If you don't know what that is, it's like Riverside and Fontana and Rancho Cucamonga and that part of Southern California that if you live up by us, you probably don't go to all that often. 1,500 churches in Southern California said, we are reopening anyway, whether you allow us to or not, California. We're reopening Sunday, March 31st. And they said, we're going to do our best to be safe, but we think that churches are essential. And this was most important. They said, we believe the governor has no plan for us. He has not engaged us in the conversation. And so if there's no conversation with us about how to reopen, we're going to just do it. In fact, I watched the press conference for this on YouTube. I made my family sit and watch it with me because I had it on our TV. It's like 45 minutes, and it's just pastor after pastor taking the microphone and explaining why they're disappointed and they're going to open no matter what. And here's where those pastors were right. They're right on two parts. One, churches are essential. That was one of their themes. Churches are essential. You know, that previous recording I did last week, I went into a long explanation of why we have been doing essential activities, things that are actually essential. And all of those things, from the blood drive to the work we're doing with the produce, to the work we're doing with homeless, to getting masks to the elderly, all of those are essential things, right? But even beyond that, connection to God and connection to other people is essential on a spiritual, emotional health level. So I agree with those pastors. Church is essential. And by the way, I think the president and the governor have now said that. So way to go, guys. The second thing I agree with that these churches said, it has felt like the governor hasn't really had a plan. What I mean is, if he's had a plan to get churches to meet in person again, nobody's communicated it to us in California, the churches themselves. Nobody's said, hey, hang in there, churches. We're going to do this and then this and then this, and then we'll know it's okay to open it. And I'm not faulting him. The governor's had a lot going on, right? There's a lot of really important fish to fry in this thing, but any communication to churches about anything would have been nice. There has been nothing. So these churches down in Southern California decided to resume no matter what. Okay, this was going to happen no matter what. And there's a number of churches up in the Bay Area that are doing that as well. Some of our churches toward Sacramento are doing that. Our rural churches are doing that. A handful are. Um, and even a couple in Livermore. So churches have decided to resume March 31st no matter what. It's after that that the president, a few weeks later, kind of emboldened their resolve by saying churches are essential, uh, which then made those churches go, great, now if we meet, we've got the president behind us. So 3 days after the president said that, the governor who, get this, had just had a state court, I believe it was a state superior court, back him in a lawsuit for stopping in-person services, like right after the court rules that it's okay for him to keep churches from meeting. Literally, I believe it's the same day he says churches can resume in-person gatherings in California. But here are the guidelines, and he gives us a bunch of guidelines. And I'm going to read them to you, but I just want you to see how that all went down. A bunch of churches clamored to be able to meet again in California. The president says, go for it. 3 days later, the governor, who had been fighting it all along, says, go for it. And, and then he issued guidelines. Now, I, I give you all that backstory. And again, I'm going to get into what the county has now said and what happened on our phone call this week. But I just need to be clear, just from what you know so far, we're not being invited in California to meet again because it's safe. You get that, right? It's because it's politically expedient. Here's the thing. I'm not taking sides politically, Republicans, Democrats. The fact is, in this situation, you've got a Republican president, you've got a Democrat governor. They're both saying the same thing. Feel free to resume your in-person services. But it's not because the science has shown us that it's safe to gather again. If you look at this, the timing and the sequence of events that has led up to those announcements, it tells us that it's because churches were going to do it anyway. And both of those politicians I've mentioned, they want to be the ones who said yes to churches, or at least not be the ones who said no to churches, right? And CrossWinds, here's the deal, it's still not safe. I called medical professionals from within the CrossWinds church family once this new California order came out, just to say, what do you think? What should we do? And I've clearly been told by people who are part of our faith community who do not have a stake in the game. They don't have a political office to run for re-election. They're not hoping to get your vote on anything. These are just people who work in hospitals and doctors' offices and who work with companies trying to keep their employees safe in the middle of this pandemic. These are people you sit next to in church every Sunday, and each one of them said, we're right. It's not safer to meet today than it was a month ago. And just because we can do in-person services in California doesn't mean that we should. It doesn't mean that that's what's wise or what's best for the people of CrossWinds or their neighbors. And we've got other options for what it means to do church together in the middle of all of this. So, here's in essence what I've been told as I've talked to those people in our church. We're still in a shelter in place. That hasn't ended. Now, it might end in the next day or two. I don't know. But if it were safe, earlier this week when the governor had announced it's okay for churches to meet again, if it were safe, the shelter in place would have been lifted, right? But it's not lifted. The whole point is you're supposed to stay home and not be engaging other people out in public. And so for a church to be congregating, getting with people will continue to have the same effect, and in so many ways as if we weren't in a shelter in place anymore. So what I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. This is not hey, the shelter in place is lifted, go back to church. This is if you're going to go back to church anyway, because we know a bunch of you were, then all right, but here's how we recommend you do it to create the least amount of spread possible at your church. This coming Sunday, March 31st, I'm going to be devoting our sermon time to what in-person things you're going to see CrossWinds start doing in the coming weeks and months. I'm not going to get into it here on this because you're going to see it on Sunday. But I want to just share with you what the state guidelines are that have been issued when the governor said it's okay for California churches to start meeting again. And part of why I want to share a few of these with you, I think you're going to go, I don't know if I want to meet again. This is the guidelines that tell us what a worship service needs to look like to create the least amount of spread. By the way, this is 13 pages of guideline. I won't read them all. And by the way, the guidelines are all really good. I'm not complaining about them. I'm sharing a few of them with you so you can tell what a service would look like in California right now. All right. First one, limiting it to 100 people or less. Anywhere in California, it's got to be a certain size. I think it's like a third of the size of your auditorium, maybe less. Or if your auditorium's big enough that a third would get you over 100, you can't go over 100 no matter what. If you have a 5,000 seat auditorium, you can't put more than 100 people in it. Separate household seating areas. So those rows, however you do it, you got to have like a 6 foot radius from anyone around you. You have to dedicate staff to enforce those social distancing rules. You have to shorten the service as much as possible. I'm sure a lot of you would like that. You have to clean the auditorium between every service. So it's not like you're going to be able to do back to back to back to back to back services. I mean, you can, but you've got to give a good amount of time to do a real deep cleaning. There would be no kids ministry. You understand that, right? If churches in California open right now, no kids ministry, no allowing kids to use the playground. Okay, all of that right there makes this really, really hard. Encouraging you, we'd have to encourage you to not socialize with people. No shaking hands, no hugging. We've got to dedicate staff to make sure that no one congregates in the lobby or any other social area, our courtyard, anything else. Actually, they would ask you to close the lobby off somehow so that people don't stand around. The idea would be that you kind of come in the door socially distant, find your seat, and then you leave socially distant. You prop the doors open so nobody has to touch a door handle. Again, we'd close down the courtyard where we have tables and chairs, so nobody's touching tables and chairs. Turn off the drinking fountains so that no one gets anywhere near those. There'd be no handouts. There'd be no coffee. Let me say that again. No coffee. No coffee. I have a sip of my coffee right now while I let you think about that. And then strongly consider discontinue singing. Okay. No singing. I say that. Those are just a few of the guidelines. It's not going to be a good experience to just start church up again right now, March 31st. This would not be the service that you're used to. In fact, I think we have a better service doing what we're doing online for time being. And maybe most significantly in California, this is a plan for 3 weeks. It's a 3-week plan, at which point they're going to check and see if they would discontinue allowing churches to meet in person or open it back up. So what does that mean if it's a 3-week plan? Here's what it means. Essentially, it's an experiment. And I know that our church believes everything's an experiment, but maybe not your health. It's an experiment, and we as a church would be the guinea pigs. And the state is saying, here's where I can appreciate it. The state is saying, hey, churches, you asked for it. So we're going to give you the chance to be the guinea pigs that you want to be with your health. But every medical professional I've spoken to says, do not do it. I gave you 2 cases on the podcast I had recorded last week, one in Mendocino, one in Texas. All right, I read one this week. A church in Germany was allowed to reopen. This was not against the law. They were allowed to reopen. Over 40 cases of coronavirus traced to one service they had. In Arkansas, back in March, around 300 people that attended a rural church. This is a rural church. There was not a lot of spread in that community already. Okay, 92 of the 300 who went ended up contracting COVID-19. 38, that's like 38% of the people in attendance. 3 of those people died. And then out of that 26 more cases spread through the community from the people who had gone to the service. So these are 26 people who didn't even go to the church, but they got it from people who did. And one of those 26 died. That speaks to the point I was trying to make in that last recording about we love you and we love our neighbors. We don't want this to spread to them. Here, closer to home, a third of the cases in Sacramento County, one third in the entire Sacramento County, are linked to church services. So think about that. What's a service where you can't see your friends, you can't sing along, you have to wear a mask, you can't shake a hand, you can't hug people, you can't hang out in the lobby and build community, you can't hang out in the courtyard, we have nothing for your kids. If you're elderly or immunocompromised, don't come. That's not a service. That's I think politicians who maybe don't spend a lot of time in a church like ours being pressured to let churches go back to meeting and then giving restrictions that, in my mind, make church not church. So my week was spent thinking about, all right, if we're not going to just blindly follow the California state, go ahead and open, how are we going to know when it's safe to go back? And that has been worrying me all week until yesterday. Yesterday we had a call with the Alameda County Health Department. They have hundreds of people working across our county to track and to monitor, to collect data, to support high-risk people in the middle of this. And counties in California, after that blanket kind of, hey, we can open up church, counties have options as of this week to open up the in-person thing if those counties meet certain criteria. Frankly, the most densely populated counties are really not able to do this. Other counties in California are able because they had like a lower disease burden to begin with. But our county yesterday, as we were on the call, said they will not be allowing in-person church gatherings at this time. They're holding back from allowing churches to go back. And they wanted to hold a conversation with us as pastors yesterday to just kind of plan together for what it would look like to reopen in-person gatherings when the time comes. I think we should be taking the county guidance because they understand better than anyone that it is not safe right now. And yet they agree that faith-based communities are essential. It's just still not safe yet. So here's what happened. Erica Pun, who's the interim health officer for Alameda County, she was on this thing, and she explained to us that I think we have 3,049.50, I don't know, positive cases in Alameda County. And here's what they're noticing. Our cases are continuing to increase. Now, you could say, well, that's because testing is increasing, and she brought that up. And she said, yes, that is true. But here's the other thing. Hospitalizations have been increasing over the last few weeks. And that's not because of testing. That is a sign that something's not going the right way. They actually talked to us and explained that they have kind of a red, yellow, and green system when it comes to some progress markers they like to see. Let's say hospitalizations is one of them. And when everything is green, that means we're doing good in our progress. When it's red, it means we're doing real bad. And if it's like an amber or a yellow or an orange, that means we got to keep an eye on it. This is not so good, and we're kind of downgrading our progress. Well, hospitalizations have gone from the light green area to the yellow-orange area in the last week or two. Here's what their hypothesis is. The incubation period for this takes a week to 2 weeks. Well, we're about 3 weeks from May 4th when they relaxed some of the restrictions. Specifically, one of the ones, they relaxed the restriction on construction. Well, here we are, about 3 weeks out of that, and all of a sudden they're starting to see an increase in hospitalizations, and the county health department is going, now's the time when we would be noticing the choices we made 3 weeks ago starting to have an impact in our county, and it looks like it might be having a negative impact. We're like a week or two out from another set of easing of restrictions, curbside pickup. Now you can go to a few more stores and restaurants and actually not dine in, but there's a little bit more interacting with others, and we're seeing the results of that. Uh, my hunch is we're also seeing people who are sick of sheltering in place start to get together with people more. And as that happens, we're starting to see that cause some more of this stuff that we don't want to see progress. And so, long story short, she explained we're just not able to move further into this kind of stage two yet because of that lack of progress or progress the wrong way. They've got a lot of ideas about what it could look like for churches in Alameda County to reopen. And some of those we're allowed to do right now, obviously, right? Like, so remote services online, we're doing that. Uh, Vehicle-based gatherings where you drive in, we've talked about that at CrossWinds. We're just not sure that that's better than the online thing in the end. In the future, when we're able to get a little closer to in-person stuff, we've talked on our phone call about what it looks like to offer staggered services of 100 people or less. We've talked about outdoors. Outdoors was a major theme in our phone call. Man, the more you can do outdoors, the more you can keep this virus from spreading. In fact, you're going to notice on Sunday a major theme of the message is outdoors. So I'll save that for then. But the big question is, when will churches be able to start to gather again? And they just don't know. They hope that it could be in the next few weeks in some way or another, perhaps outdoors sooner than the 100 or less indoor that the state has allowed for. But they just don't know yet. One of the things that was really, really fascinating, and to me, something that is an exciting thing because it's part of what we've been thinking through is our stages with CrossWinds, our stages of resuming in-person gatherings. They asked us as pastors, one of the things we're considering in the county is starting to allow I should say all of our people, to break out of their households and basically form cohorts. That's the only word I could think of. Like social gathering cohorts of like 10 to 12 people, maybe with two other households, and doing a little bit of life together as we continue on in the situation we're in. So, in other words, you, Coli household, could get together with a second household and a third household, and that 10 to 12 people could all kind of agree with each other. We're going to exclusively see only each other during this, but at least we're not limited to just our household. And the reason they were asking us as pastors is one of the thoughts was, what would it be for churches to allow for households like that to start to have viewing parties of their online experience? And so that's another thing we've kind of been talking about a little bit, and that might be something you see coming from the county, not just in regards to church, but in regards to just you having a different kind of social bubble that gets bigger than just your own household, right? Another thing that came up on all of this is, at what safe distance, if you did church, would you not have to wear masks or face coverings? Here was the real honest answer. There is no distance right now where you don't need to wear a mask. If people are within 30 yards of you right now, you should be wearing one when you're walking around, when you're in your neighborhood, wherever you are. We asked about singing in this. If you kept all the guidelines, would singing still be high risk? And the answer was yes, because science is showing when you sing, you're projecting more. Your voice, you're singing loud and projecting it further, and your droplets are going further. And so we talked about singing with face coverings on, and if you do sing with that, even then, how do you make sure you're even further apart than 6 feet? So lots to think through in all of that. There was some conversation, some pastors kind of pushed back, just to give you the inside scoop on that, saying, hey, we're a city within the county that has low rates of spread. And so why do we have to be treated like everybody else in the county? Here's the thing. The way that it works, health ordinances have to be countywide unless your city, like Berkeley, has their own health department. But otherwise, it's got to be countywide. And the reason being, people move from city to city within the county. And we know people in our city move from county to county, right? I mean, you go somewhere for work that's a different county. You might go to a restaurant, even for pickup, that is a different county, especially where we're at in the Tri Valley. We're right on the border of counties. It's a big deal. And it's easy to say, well, here in Livermore or Pleasanton or Dublin, we have less than elsewhere. But the fact is, we're all over. Another pastor came on and said, "Hey, are you treating us like children? We're old enough to make our own decisions, and we're adults, and we know the guidelines, so we can follow them. Why are you forcing us to all have to follow the rules that you're creating, as opposed to us just following guidelines and as adults knowing when and what to do?" Here's the thing: from a county-wide level, they have to think about every gathering, all gatherings, faith based or not. They can't look at you at church and say, we're going to let you 500 people gather, but we're not going to do it with a movie theater over here or a sporting event over here, even a small sporting event, right? They've just got to look at gatherings collectively and decide whether or not they're safe in this county. And they've got to balance how to allow certain things so as to not overwhelm the entire healthcare system. That is a big deal. It's easy to say you're an adult, you can make your own decisions, but what happens when those decisions affect the entire healthcare system? Point being in all of that, their goal, and this is a really difficult goal, is to have to moderate all of that. They've saved thousands of lives by doing what they've done. Their challenge is in allowing anything for one community and then having to disallow it for others. This is a very big challenge that I'm grateful I don't have to figure out. So a great phone call, and I left it feeling very confident that regardless of what's happening on a national level, on a state level, locally, with our Alameda County Health Department, with people who are not running for reelection to have a health department office, who are not willing to risk your life just so that everybody can feel good and say, yay, we love you, specifically politician or something like that. I felt confident that they are watching out for what's best for the people in our county and for you, the people in our church and in our neighborhoods. So what do we do? Well, CrossWinds, for now, we as a church, we come up with a way to resume in person eventually when the county says yes, but without the part where we have to stop doing everything that makes a service something that you want to come to. Here's the truth for us. We've got to balance two things at CrossWinds. We've got to balance doing something great each week with you and for you, and then we've got to balance that with your safety and my safety and our staff safety and our volunteers' safety. So we think we've come up with some things. I'll be explaining it this Sunday in our service video, and we think it's a set of things that will be both of those, great and safe. And we'll be following our county guidelines, and in fact, we'll probably be even a little bit behind our county opening, so that we can just be as safe as possible. And I hope that you will feel proud of CrossWinds, and once again, you will trust us as your leaders, that we do not want to put you in danger. All right, thanks for listening, and we'll see you Sunday.